Just like every star in the sky is different, every set of rankings are different as well. Some are more different than others. So some have different underpinnings for the reasons for their rankings. I've got Chris Harris from Harris Football joining me next up on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Jeff Erickson here with Christopher Harris from Harris Football. We are brought to you by Fantasy Sports Knockout, Verse Fantasy, and Fantrax. Chris, welcome. It's been a couple of hot weeks, I think, since we last talked, since we did the What Could We Be Wrong About podcast on your podcast. How are you?
I'm good. You're catching me like 1 second since I finished my own show for the morning. So my God, my head is brimming with amazing information.
All right. Awesome. Let's share it. What was your topic today?
So part of it was going through the cutdown day, NFL cutdown day, and figuring out who did what. Part of it was average draft position. I did some spreadsheet work to figure out what players have changed most for ADP. And then the guest was Sig Bloom, and we did unbuzzed about players who were drafting. So like guys who haven't been in the news too much, but we still like the value.
Okay. I like it. You know, and I know you of all people are not slave to ADP. In fact, you fight the power that is against ADP. And that's kind of the whole point of this podcast today is that, you know, this is different. You know, I listened to your first look at ADP with Dave Kluge from Football Guys, 2 weeks ago. And it's just, you know, I always like that you insulate yourself from that.
Yeah, I don't look at average draft position until like the second week. It might have been 3 weeks ago now, but yeah, to the second week of August is when I start looking at ADP, because I feel like before then it's groupthink. It's a bunch of people. Well, it's sickos who are doing drafts when nobody else is doing drafts. So it's getting overweighted by that. It's definitely getting overweighted by default ranks, and it's getting overweighted by best ball, because most people who are doing drafts before there's any actual news before August is best ball, because people can't hold their water. They can't stop themselves from wanting to do fantasy drafts. So I just feel like it's garbage in, garbage out. When it comes to ADP, like in July, I don't pay attention. I legitimately don't even look at it until the second week of August. What a hero I am.
Yeah. Well, you're busy with other things like your almanac, for instance, which you're back to doing this year. Awesome. Yes. As always. People should check it out. harrisfootball.com. You can see more about that there. Find out everything about that. But for those of the uninitiated, tell people about the almanac.
I watch I watch all the games like during the season as they're happening. A lot of us do that. And then I rewatch a bunch of film for the summer. And when I worked for ESPN many moons ago, they had a print magazine. Do they still? I don't even know. Where I wrote the player profiles that you would buy on the newsstand. You would read the profile. It'd be like 200 pithy words about each player underneath. And I wrote those. And when I went on my own, I moved to do it for myself, but not as a print magazine, as a PDF. And also when you have a PDF, you have a lot more room to write. So I wrote a bunch more. I started giving film grades to every player. There's some jokes. Hopefully people laugh when they read it. We have like a lot of statistical deep dives, lots of different kinds of ranks and stuff. So it's a PDF that has about 230 something player profiles. This time of year, as drafts are like, you know, we're really in the middle of it. It'll help with drafts. But also my goal for it, you know, I'm really ranking and writing about a lot more players than actually will go in standard drafts. So I also like that people have it as a resource for when something happens. You want to wait, who's Dylan Lobby? He just had a good game. I'm going to go look up his profile, and hopefully then you get like an underpinning of whether to bid for a guy on waivers, whether we think the guy's actually good or not.
Absolutely. Thank you, King Tone, for the compliments on Chris's stuff. Great stuff, he said. Great, funny stuff. And, you know, I do the same thing for like the baseball magazine we used to do forever. And we do 2,500 player outlooks. We do the projections for so many players. But yet, mid-season, a guy gets called up. Like, who's this guy? Right. This guy that got traded. Oh yeah, he made the cut to our magazine. Let's talk about him here a little bit. And it is nice there to get that base skills, which is kind of the point of our conversation today. We're trying to find the players' base skills, not always just focus on their roles.
For sure. You know, there's a lot of assumptions that get baked into how we draft players in fantasy. And fortunately or unfortunately, football from year to year reinvents itself like no other sport. You just don't get the wild swings in other sports the way you do with football, not only with like team performance, but individual player performance. And so we just collectively forget every year that the thing that you just saw isn't forever, because it changed from what you thought it was going to be from the year before and the year before that. And I try to remove as much as possible assumptions about how good or bad teams are going to be, how hard or easy schedules are, like what the coach's plans are for players, because we don't know all that stuff with any kind of definitiveness that we think we do when we go in. I try to make my assessments of players be as much as possible about their actual abilities, my assessment of their abilities. Am I wrong sometimes? Absolutely. Do we sometimes get situations right and it turns out, yeah, that was just hopeless? Absolutely. But enough of the time. And like, listen, I also think the 49ers offense is going to be pretty good. So I got a lot of 49ers ranked really high. So I am certainly weighing situation. It's not like I'm only giving you assessment of ability and not situation, but I'm just trying to make situation matter as little as I can when I'm assessing.
Sure. I think that's the starting point there. And I think there's, one of the things we have a problem with sometimes in our industry is recency bias. We look at what happened last year, look at but the thing is we look at just the result, maybe not the process, how it got there. Look at we look at, okay, Alvin Kamara, he was terrible last year. But you'd look at the tape, you look at certain things that you're looking for beyond just beyond just the numbers there.
Yeah, I mean, Kamara's a great example. We were talking about him on the show earlier in the week, and people love underlying metrics to determine that someone stinks or someone is good, because in other sports they work. And in football, like, there's no, having watched what Alvin Kamara did on the field last year, there's no underlying metric that's going to be able to capture how unwinnable his situation was. It was a combination of a terrible offensive line, bad coaching, he himself potentially being somewhat distracted because the suspension. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that was kind of unovercomable. And so, like, you're never going to find the underlying metric that goes, he was okay. And so, like, maybe he wasn't, maybe he's completely fallen off a cliff. There are certainly people who will tell you that. All I know is that when I watched the film, what I was overwhelmed by was how there was nowhere that he could run. And that when he got little dump offs where he got a little moment to gather himself and get into space, he looked like the same Alvin Kamara. He still made plays. He still made people miss. Did that ability go away when he was handed the ball? Or was it maybe something more qualitative about a lack of creativity on the coaching staff? And this is a chestnut that my listeners have heard me say several times, but in this world where Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan have kind of taken over offenses in the NFL, where pre-snap motion is everything. The Dolphins last year, almost 90% of their plays had pre-snap motion. Alvin Kamara, a full half of his carries had no pre-snap motion last year. That's the old guy. That's the old guy. And so the new guy is a McVay guy, and they are going to be trying to deceive defenses more this year. And I think that will benefit Kamara. We'll find out if I'm right that his ability is still okay. But I just don't really believe that there's going to be any metric that's going to be able to capture that.
Yeah. So talking about metrics, are there some that you like better than others? Are there some that you do use in your analysis?
What stats are good at is telling you what happened. And so I'm fine with it. I'm fine with things as simple as yards per carry telling me that a guy had an explosive game or an explosive season even, but they're not that predictive. This whole expected yards, it's based on chaos. It's based on 22 guys, and if the left tackle falls down versus the left defensive end falling down, you get wildly different outlier data, and then that data skews averages forever. There's no getting away from it. It's just going to skew it. So, like, the answer really is I don't find too many of the newfangled metrics they're interesting to think about, but I don't really find them to be predictive.
Okay. I tend to agree with you. I'm not super conversant in like DVOA or things of that nature. I think it's good to know where they are, how they've been doing. I think that's in season, especially. I think sometimes that can be helpful, and that makes me want to go, okay, let's go look at the film a little bit more and see what I can see after that. Like, why are they so low like that?
I mean, DVOA is a different kettle of fish. That's about team performance.
True.
And that's, I mean, it's clearly as the macro gets bigger, things get more, and the sample sizes get bigger, things get more predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Our issue is that in our business, we're having to tell you whether this Sunday Isaiah Pacheco is going to score a touchdown. That's what I got to tell you. And I'm sorry, there's not a lot of metrics that are going to predict that. No. Other than he's good and he's on a good offense, and I've liked the way they've looked.
When you're watching film, what do you prioritize? Like for a quarterback, for instance, what particular traits are you looking for the most to see how well they're playing, how strong their skills are?
Well, it's certainly not a checklist or a number thing. It's definitely the pornography, when you see it.
Yes.
I think overall, what convinces me that a quarterback is good is a lack of mistakes, obvious, glaring, stupid throws, whether they're intercepted or not. Like crazy footwork where he gets himself in bad throwing positions or doesn't do that haven't yet led to disaster but could. Aggressiveness where it's clear to me, sometimes not clear in real time because you're watching a game in real time, not getting every camera angle, but hopefully eventually if you're watching back film and you get to see coaches film and stuff, you see that if he has a deep option and a shallow option, he takes the deep option. I want aggressiveness in quarterbacks. And certainly, of course, being able to parse what made a good quarterback rushing performance special or not special. Was it, just listen, they didn't cover, he's not that amazing as a runner, just they let him go and you're going to see it's big in the box score, but it's not all that impressive. Or is it, the dude looks like a running back. When I watch it, it's incredible. And that is going to repeat itself. I'd say those are maybe the backbone of how I watch quarterback film.
All right. And then, quarterbacks, how about running backs? Is there, you said, just like, we'll go back to our example of Kamara. Like, I know you're looking at an impossible situation when he is in space. What are you looking for?
Yeah, there's a few things. I'd say how tacklers react is almost the most important thing. When people have a beat on him, do they get square hits? Do they miss entirely? And then as far as cutting ability goes, speed is kind of obvious. Like, we all know when someone is real fast, when they're running in a straight line, especially because a defender will take bad lines, like I've got him. And then, whoa, I'm now having to run sideways because he's approaching me faster than I thought. Cutting ability, I often say it's this notion that I've kind of just doing this so long that I kind of know it almost instinctively, but a guy who can change directions off of 1 foot, not having to 2 foot a cut, and then also not having to decelerate when they vector change, when they change directions. Some of my favorite running backs, often the helmet actually doesn't bob when they cut. You see, just that's a gliding feeling, the Barry Sanders feeling of he's now running in a different direction, but nothing really changed, and he didn't slow down, and his upper body didn't need to waste motion. For as far as elite movers go, that's usually what I'm looking for. I mean, for sure, power, we care, especially near the goal line. We care about power. So I'll legitimately want to know how willing somebody is, how good the vision is to find the path of least resistance, and then how willing they are to take on a tackler and bury him. That matters too.
Sure. 100%. Now you're going to anticipate my next question: pass catchers, wide receivers, tight ends. How about there? Again, full speed cuts that matter a lot, I imagine, there as well. Route running matters. What are you looking for?
Yeah, the really special guys, it's routes. And unless the actual broadcasts are showing you inset shots of routes, you usually find those on coaches' film. So you're not going to know it as much. The elite guys, the ones that the TV networks already know are good routes, they'll focus on Jefferson. They'll have a camera on Jefferson the entire game so that they'll show you the routes. But what we're looking for is the next Jefferson, the guy they aren't ISOing with at the snap or whatever. So we need to find that out via coach's film. But for sure, it when you see it. We all do. We all see it when Keenan Allen runs a route. He's as slow as molasses, but just as a technician, he has control over his limbs that most humans don't have. So I care about that. I'm certainly telling you on the show all the time whether someone has bad hands, and maybe it doesn't always show up in drop type situations. like concentration lapses. The Calvin Ridley season from last year, where you're like, sometimes he looks great and the production is good, and then sometimes they throw it to him a lot and he keeps making a mistake, and it seems like the quarterback expected him to do something else. Like, I'm for sure always making note where the quarterback thought a receiver was supposed to be somewhere else. Maybe I can't tell whose fault it was, but it's useful to know that they weren't on the same page.
Yeah, I remember that Calvin Ridley home game against Houston last year should be put in a museum of mistakes. It was so bad. There were drops. There were the procedure penalties. It was clear he was elsewhere that day. Yeah. What do you make of Ridley this year, by the way, in Tennessee?
You know, he's the market has paid attention to how disappointing it was last year, and also probably is concerned about Will Levis. So, I have the requisite concern that Calvin Ridley might be a little bit of a knucklehead, and it's a little late for a young career breakout because he's 29. It's been a long time since he's posted a really productive season, but the market is probably lower on him than I am, so I sometimes do get him as a bench guy.
Yeah, I could see it. I could see it there. It is one where I thought he'd rate higher earlier on, and then others have become in favor, if you will. I don't have a whole lot of them yet, and I play in way too many leagues, Chris. Way too many leagues. But I think I'm at 15 to 17 right now, and I still have more this weekend. And I don't know, but we'll see. I'll find a way to manage it at some point there. But anyways, Calvin Ridley. That there we are on him. We're going to talk about Chris's website, his podcast, and almanac. We're also going to talk about some players where he differs from the herd. But first, we're going to share a quick note from our sponsors at Fantasy Sports Knockout. Fantasy Sports Knockout, where a fantasy league meets a knockout pool, an innovative take on fantasy football. The concept is simple. Choose a new fantasy lineup each week and score points the same way you would in any fantasy league. But you must choose your players wisely. You can only use each player one time. The lowest weekly score or group of scores is eliminated from the contest every week. The concept may be simple, but survival is not. How will you play? Load up early and play the matchups, or play the matchups and save the better players for later. Fantasy Sports Knockout. Can you survive the fantasy? Sign up at play.fantasysportsknockout.com today. I'm here with Christopher Harris. Chris, you've got the harrisfootball.com. You've got 5 weekly podcasts, if I recall correctly. I love dropping in on those. You have some of my favorite people in the industry on those as well. And you have the almanac this year too. How can people get your content?
harrisfootball.com. That's about it. harrisfootball.com. I've got ranks, and the almanac stuff is up there, and certainly all the podcasts are represented there. It's kind of just me. It's been just me for this is the 10th season, Jeff. You've been coming on for 10 years.
Yeah. It's crazy. And you were with ESPN before that. I think that's where we first met. Maybe I think you were with CBS at one point in time too. Did I get that right? Or
no, Yahoo briefly.
Yeah,
Yahoo.
That's it. Okay.
Very briefly.
You also are a writer. Not just football, but you like real writing. You did a lot of that this summer. How'd that go?
It's going good. Writing is okay. I have a master's in MFA in creative writing. That when I quit real jobs before I started doing football stuff, I had real jobs, and in between I got an MFA in creative writing, and what I was looking to do was write novels, and the life affords me the opportunity to do that in the off season. So I've published 4 novels. I have another big one that's ready to go. So all of the literary agents who are no doubt watching the RotoWire live feed or listening to the podcast afterward, you should definitely reach out to me, you literary agents out there, because I have a new book that people will like.
Teeming in the audience. They're waiting. They're just so shy. They don't want to chime in the chat. I get it there. But please reach out to harrisfootball.com for that. Let's talk about how you differentiate yourself from the herd. We'll start off at quarterback. And there's a lot of points of differentiation here. I listed 2 to 3 of them, but we might go a little on some others as well. Jalen Hurts. When we last saw Jalen Hurts, he was running for his life against the Bucs. In the regular season, he struggled a little bit as well. You have him in your rankings as the QB6. It's not a massive insult or anything, but it's out of line with other rankings, the general drafting public, if you will. Tell me more about Jalen Hurts.
The running quarterbacks are, I think the market is having a hard time with the running quarterbacks. I think ADP in general is being infiltrated by best ball. And there's no question Jalen Hurts in best ball, if you're going to have two quarterbacks in a super flex league or whatever, Jalen Hurts is worth higher than I'm ranking him because compared to another quarterback, he's got a chance to give you a 60-point week, for heaven's sake. If the tush push is real, again, then Jalen Hurts could go crazy again. The place where I tend to deviate on the running quarterbacks is the ride is brutal unless they're good throwers, unless they give you great production every so often with their arm. I'm scared that when I most need it, I get left holding the bag the way people who had Hurts in the fantasy playoffs did last year. And I have a lot of questions about Jalen Hurts, the thrower. They've tried to address what went wrong with Philadelphia last year. I mean, Kellen Moore as the solution for anything in the NFL feels like, wow, okay, cool. We're still doing this, because I'm recalling that the Cowboy pass offense got better when he left Dallas, and the Chargers sure weren't any good last year. So, okay, maybe Kellen Moore's going to fix everything. It feels to me like there's a the Eagles at least have to react to what the league did to them defensively last year. And what they did, for 11 weeks, they were 10-1. They were flying high. Hurts was great. The passing game was working. It was wonderful. And then they started to send pressure and not sit back, which is a very different modus than you do against Mahomes and Burrow and the guys that you're scared of they're throwing. You blitz, but you play backs to avoid the big plays. And with the Eagles, they were sending pressure and then just trying to cut off the short stuff. And maybe Hurts was injured, and maybe we're going to see a totally different. He's got great skill weapons, but I have enough questions that the ride is going to be very bumpy. And then there is the obvious question of Jason Kelce no longer being the center. Right. And could that be the key to how he got so many 1-yard touchdowns, or Saquon Barkley's there? So, without whatever it is, a dozen 1-yard touchdowns, I think we look at Jalen Hurts very differently.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting that even in the NFFC, which is 6 points for a passing touchdown, so no best ball here. You can filter for the type of draft. I like that about their ADP, but even there, he's still the QB3, which is interesting. Hurts is over Lamar, over Stroud, over Burrow, a few others as well. I think, and you would think in that format, which is 6 points for a passing touchdown, maybe the running quarterbacks wouldn't rate as high, but nope, it still trends towards that.
And it's super valuable. I mean, I'm not trying to tell people that pop weeks aren't awesome.
Right.
Like, if you can tell me that I have the baseline of getting 20 fantasy points every week, and then every so often I get 50, that guy's the QB1, that guy's the QB2, that guy's Josh Allen. You know, the problem is that I don't really feel you can give me that baseline with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair consideration. Similarly, Anthony Richardson,
right?
He's again kind of untried. It looks like he could have some real pop games, but he also needs to get through games. You've got him as your QB 11. That's not going to get him in most leagues, and that's okay.
Nope.
But
yeah, I mean, I'm rarely ever going to take a quarterback early anyway. That's just in a single quarter. Super flex, you're taking him in the first round. No, the good ones, no question. But in a single quarterback league, I'm just never. It doesn't matter for me personally in my drafts where I have Jalen Hurts ranked, because I'm not going to get him. And I'm not going to get Anthony Richardson in the 5th round. I'm just not going to do that. I think that should be. I feel like that should be almost self-evident. I know there are people who don't believe that, they go the other way, but my feeling is that Anthony Richardson has played 3.5 NFL games and he only got through 2 of them. And so he has to show he can protect himself, and he probably will. Like, a lot of injuries are just, it's not, he's going to take hits. He needs to do a good job protecting himself. He'll probably be fine. He'll probably make it through most of the season, but you have to factor it in that we've never really seen him be able to survive in the NFL. It's a small consideration to me. The larger consideration is kind of the same argument with Hurts, which is, I think there are going to be great weeks, but do you want 25 points like clockwork every single week, or do you want 40 some weeks and 7 some weeks? Because that's, to me, a really rough ride. And until Richardson proves that he's more accurate as a thrower, and he was okay. There were good moments last year, but he had some really bad moments too. I mean, threw away the Rams game.
Yeah, that's right.
Terrible interception. So like he's just a lot to prove, and I wouldn't be spending a 5th round pick on him.
Yeah, and and that's the thing too, is like more often than not, I am also waiting on quarterbacks for the same reasons you cite. And yeah, that doesn't mean I'm going to get him. I did get him in a super flex league. That's one place where I did get Richardson, but yeah, I get it for sure. Okay, flip side, guys like Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott are going to rank higher. Joe Burrow, you've got 4. I want to talk about Justin Herbert though, who is your QB 13, still not a fantasy starter technically there, but still, he's dropped. I think that, the floor has dropped on his draft position there. He's going sometimes as QB 19 or 20 even. And you and I talked about Justin Herbert here on your podcast, that's probably in air a little bit.
Yeah, I wish he hadn't had the foot thing during training camp, because he was set to be a flag player of mine, which would be like I picked 10 guys to plant a flag on and say, okay, at this draft position, I want this guy. He was locked in. He was going to be the quarterback on the list for sure until the foot thing came up. And, he's back at practice and he's doing everything again, but I don't trust that the foot thing won't recur. We've heard of plantar fasciitis, hurting people over the long term for sure. And then also it's a brand new offense with a brand new coaching staff and all new weapons, and losing out on an entire training camp does matter to me. Even if it's not a complete death knell, it could work out fine, but you have to work it. In the range of possible outcomes, you have to filter the possibility that it's a slow start getting things together. We all know the actual reason why Justin Herbert is not loved in fantasy drafts, and it's because people have decided that that Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman don't throw ever, I guess. Yeah. Neglecting the fact that that's not true, and that Greg Roman in his career has had games. Like, there's no world in which Justin Herbert is your best player, certainly the best player in your offense, and you go out and throw 21 times a game. It's wildly overstated. I love it. I love taking advantage of the market overreacting, the echo chamber, the talking points becoming, well, okay, we've decided that there's no chance that the Chargers will ever throw. Like, who are their receivers? They're going to run. Like, run in the NFL right now means you might run 48% of the time.
Right.
You and I had this conversation, so I'm preaching to the choir, but if Justin Herbert doesn't have 30 attempts a game, I will eat this microphone. It is going to happen. You might be annoyed that it's not 40, but this is the NFL now. And just because we don't know who the main receiver is doesn't mean there won't be one. There will be plenty of pass attempts eventually. Like the foot thing, definitely. I had him like QB 8. I was psyched. And then the foot thing shot him down to QB 13. But, I usually don't take a second QB, but in leagues where I do, he would be the guy I'd grab. Right.
And I was just going to say, you're still getting him if you want, then, if you've got him at QB 13, no matter where, pretty much wherever you want to get him. It is kind of fun to see that there. One other side note, Jayden Daniels at 20. That is certainly well lower than the herd.
Right.
Everything you said about Richardson has to apply to Daniels, and add in that he's been completely untested. And, we've had 5 years of college to watch him play, but it's a little bit different here.
Yeah, like, I'm not mad at Jayden Daniels if he's drafted as the QB 11 or 12 or something. I understand that. I'm not mad at that. It's fine. You're doing that very late. Hopefully, this is a 9th round pick or something. You're waiting a quarterback. You're taking Jayden Daniels. I'm not taking him in the 5th. I wouldn't be reaching. But as a replaceable piece, where if it isn't working out and the ride is too rocky and he's not running as much as you hoped, it doesn't matter. So, like, I'm not mad at all. In fact, in the almanac, when I started listing kind of the more boring options, the 12, 13, 14, those guys, I even say, like, I completely understand when the cost isn't high, go high upside. That's absolutely fine. And Daniels is as high upside as they come.
All right. Very good. We're going to talk running backs, but first, quick note from our friends at Verse Fantasy. Why wait all season to win in fantasy? With Verse Fantasy, you can cash in every week. Download the Verse app, sync your fantasy league, and start wagering and winning today. Verse Fantasy is the new way to play fantasy. There's no need to draft a new team or bring your league to a new platform. Simply sync your current league from ESPN, Sleeper, or Yahoo into the Verse Fantasy app and instantly get money lines and spreads for your league's matchups that week. Playing fantasy for fun is cool, but playing for real money is the future. Play for real money on your own underdog lines and place contest entries between primetime games to bet on your own comeback. Verse will even show you your odds for winning the title or being crowned the Sacco, every player's nightmare. Enter the arena this season with Verse Fantasy. Use promo code ROTO, that's ROTO, to get a 100% deposit match up to $50 when you sign up. Talking with Christopher Harris from harrisfootball.com, the Harris Football Podcast, the Harris Football Almanac, player profiles, all you want. You can get a novel by Harris. Check out everything. There's even music on your site.
Well, I didn't make the music. That's fair. But there's hundreds of songs that listeners have made. That is true.
Yeah. And mixtapes and all that. I've got one.
Yeah.
I love it.
You do.
I love it. I'm not
Eric Jefferson.
No.
Everybody knows.
Exactly. All right, running backs. Everybody's got an opinion about running back. So it's easy to find places where it can vary. But Josh Jacobs is a guy. I'm guessing did not get a chance to catch your flag play on episode. I apologize for that. He has to be one of your flag plants, though, right?
He's not, but it was only because I was like, I put Joe Mixon on there, and they kind of go in similar ranges. And my goal with the flag list is always to try and vary up, so you can, if I pick all guys going in the third round, then you only get one of them. So I'm trying to pick different spots in the draft. So I have Jacobs rated higher than Mixon, but Mixon goes later than Jacobs, so I put Mixon on. But everybody who listens to my show already knows that they should be drafting Josh Jacobs anyway, so I felt like it was not a terrible sin of omission. Yeah,
I get it. And he goes ahead of ETN. He goes ahead of Gibbs for you. Those are two guys that are going before him. Kyron Williams also. So that's why I thought it was noteworthy. But yeah, I see Mixon there at 9 on your list. And I think maybe it's because I've talked with you about Mixon enough that I didn't include him on this one here. But
it's fine. Let's talk Jacobs. I mean, Jacobs's ADP has risen this month pretty steadily. I just did that segment on my show, and it's gone from like mid-late third round, and now you see him early third round, sometimes mid-second round.
Correct.
And it feels to me, based on the news from this past just couple of days, that when people go into drafts that they still have left to go the rest of this week and into the weekend, you're going to see Jacobs go even higher, because AJ Dillon's out for the year, and Marshawn Lloyd, it's pretty clear he hasn't practiced in a month, and they're already leaking to their media moles that they have no intention of having him be the backup to Josh Jacobs right away. So Emmanuel Wilson is the backup guy now.
Saw a lot of leaks pick him up yesterday.
Yeah, you're going to see Jacobs go high, I think. Yeah. And like rightly so, because I think the kid is great. And I love the role. It's the Aaron Jones role. I'm really into it theoretically. I will of course acknowledge that last year was a disaster. And he goes from rushing title to like not being able to move the needle at all. And that's somewhat of a concern. And like, there's a world where he gets to Green Bay and it just doesn't look right and it's not great. And by week 7, Marshawn Lloyd is healthy and they start mixing him in, and it's no longer purely Jacobs' thing. Like that's in the range of outcomes. Clearly, I'm not betting on it. I can come up with anecdotal reasons for last year, the contract holdout and potentially not being completely ready to go. And then the Raiders themselves just, stinking and rebelling against their coach, and just sort of a mess with the Raiders. So I'm choosing to believe that stuff, but I don't know that I'm right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, did you see things on the film that may have revealed that okay, he's fine, it's just it was in a bad place, kind of like you did with Kamara?
Not as much, but because he's not going to catch a million balls and be explosive. He'll catch passes. He's a good pass catcher, and that's part of the appeal with Green Bay for sure. But you're not expecting him to be Kamara in the open field. He's not explosive once he catches a little 2-yard pass. He's just gonna it's the Ramondre Stevenson work after the catch, where it's like, nice, I'm glad to have it. You run over somebody, but you're not an elite mover. And the problem is that as a runner, he just didn't really have anywhere to go, and didn't do. Can I probably find a few plays here and there? It's like, dude, go left. Come on, man, go left. But mostly it felt like he got what was blocked. The answer, that's a long answer, and I shouldn't give that. The short answer is not really.
Okay.
The short answer is not really.
Yeah. Fair enough. Derrick Henry, on the other hand, a little lower than the crowd. Not like scandalously low. You don't have him at 25. You have him at 12. You have him behind Mixon, behind Kamara, behind some guys that he goes ahead of usually in most drafts.
Speaking of someone whose ADP has changed, when I started, I was told, I mean, when I started doing ranks this summer, you don't really look at ADP in the summer, but I hear from people saying, hey, why are you so high on Derrick Henry? Hey, how come you're so bullish on Derrick Henry? How come you have Derrick Henry so high? So I don't have like a verified evidence of this certified, but it seems to me that Derrick Henry's ADP has gone up quite a bit since whenever, May, June. It's weird.
That's because those are the underdog guys that never draft running backs, right? And
Right.
they certainly, they're never going to draft Derrick Henry. So that's probably why. I'm looking at again, I like the NFFC because you can filter for date, you can filter for the type of contest, get rid of all the best ball results. He's running back 9 there.
Right.
He goes ahead, behind Achan, who I don't think you would have, behind ETN, but ahead of like Kyron Williams, Pacheco, Jacobs, Cook, etc.
So can you filter for like June?
I can filter. Yeah, let's go June. We'll do the month of June together here.
Yeah.
June 1 through June 30. That's the beautiful thing. I love their tool about that there. I mean, I don't love ADP, but I love, at least getting it right, He was RB10 then.
So it did go up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
but also keep in mind, I'm sorry, this is still the RotoWire Online Championship. Let's do their best ball contest here instead.
Okay. Well, it's going to go a lot lower. Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, it's actually not that. It's not much lower. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, standard league, he's higher for me. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming, I actually don't know which of I have standard and PPR. Were you looking at standard or were you looking at PPR for me?
PPR.
Okay. I mean, to me, that should kind of be self-evident why Derrick, like if you look at my standard ranks, Henry's above all those guys you mentioned.
True.
And it should for,
what? You're right. I'm looking at that now. 8 versus 12. You're absolutely right.
But that's fine. It's still a good conversation to have. Right. And, like it should be self-evident. Derrick Henry not only isn't going to catch passes, he's not going to play third downs. He didn't last year. Like he played like 12 third downs last year or something crazy. So there's a upside that almost every other player has that would be considered to be an RB1 that Henry just won't be adding to his stats. And you're going to need to rely on the Gus Edwards act, the Gus Edwards plus act, because if he's only Gus Edwards, my God, doesn't matter where you have him ranked in the top 12 because he's going to be a disaster. He'll be better than that. I will say, however, there's warning signs on Derrick Henry's tape. There always have been for me. I was a slow adopter on Derrick Henry because you see an awful lot of floaty 2-yard runs where he runs sideways and gets knocked over. But the whole premise with the Titans offense was always, but we're going to do that 30 times. And by the end, you're going to be tired and he's going to break free and then get to show off how fast he is down the sideline for how big he is. And so my question is, will the Ravens be as committed to the bit if you get a lot of floaty runs, or they're going to be like, sorry, man, we got Lamar Jackson and you're getting 17 carries. And if you can't make your bones on 17, you're not going to make your bones. That should be. And then also, so that's a question. And then also it was like, I don't think anybody could compare 2020 Derrick Henry tape to 2023 Derrick Henry tape and not see a difference. He's
for
slower.
Sure. Yeah,
he just is.
He's slower. The line was worse. I think maybe he might have been a slightly more tentative because of that. He got hit at the line more than any other player in football last year. And some of that's on the offensive line. Some of that's on him for like tiptoeing to the hole.
To be honest, that's been him every year. He always gets hit the most of the line because he carries it the most. And he also, doesn't explode all that much. And let's also say, again, this isn't a crap talking Derrick Henry session because, like you said, I'm
titling this. Why does Chris Harris hate Derrick Henry?
Yeah,
totally titling
because he's RB8 for me in a standard. But all the really great Ravens offensive lines of the past, there's at least it's a great coaching staff, and they'll probably figure it out. But it's a lot of turnover and a lot of low drafted guys on that offensive line now, and so we'll find out.
Yeah. I've got some concerns about Baltimore. Just losing McDonald. It's a lot of it's on the defensive side, but I mean, they even had the tragedy this last couple of weeks. They lost their offensive line coach to an acute illness. I don't know how that's going to affect the team. I don't care to speculate on that, but it sucks. It's horrible. They've had a lot of bad things happen to them, unfortunately. But anyways, nowhere to go from that. So we'll move on. You alluded to Mixon. Let's talk Mixon. We already talked Kamara earlier. I put him on your outline, but we already kind of talked about Kamara. So let's talk Mixon instead, because I know you're a Joe Mixon guy.
Yeah, I've never thought that Joe Mixon was like the best running back in the league. He's always been like exactly the ninth best running back in the league. But people treat him as though he stinks, and have for years. Every year, someone comes up and says, have you seen his yards per carry? Have you seen his average, expected yards per carry? Have you seen, and I don't know. All I see is a big dude who he's not like super agile, but for his size, he has the one cut, doesn't slow down, like changes direction real well, gets downhill, and he's a moose close to the goal line. Like every year he's been healthy, he's been easily an RB1. And it's the hesitation on him is weird to me. It's been weird from the very beginning. And if I'm getting him in the 4th round, I just find it to be like absolutely hilarious value. Maybe sometimes it's the 3rd. And in the 3rd, it probably, I would take him in the 2nd. In the 3rd, maybe it gives you pause. I would still be taking him in the 3rd. You don't have to take him in the 2nd. I've got a lot of them. And, I guess there's a chance this is the exploding cigar. This is the Todd Gurley changing teams, the Le'Veon Bell changing teams, and the former fantasy stud. His team knew him best, and they decided he was cooked and didn't want to pay him money anymore. So he goes to this new supposedly great situation and just doesn't have it anymore. But it's not what I saw on tape. And he sure does go from one good offensive spot to maybe an even better one, where it feels like they're going to be close to the end zone an awful lot, and there's going to be a chance for him to score touchdowns.
Yeah, Houston's fascinating. They had that year they did last year with a rookie quarterback, with an exploding offensive line that had so many different injuries last year. You got to figure they're going to be a little bit more stable there. I don't know if they're going to be an elite offensive line, and the guys that stepped in played up. They did well, but you would figure that it's going to be an even better offensive line situation than last year. So I'm intrigued to see what they can do with all of that there. We're going to talk wide receivers, but first, got one last note here from our friends at Fantrax. Is there something you wish your fantasy leagues had, or features that are missing from your current leagues? Bonus scoring, custom schedules or playoffs, deeper team settings? Well, look no further, because we have you covered with our friends at Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Fantrax even offers college football fantasy leagues. Create or join a fantasy football commissioner league, invite your friends, and dominate your draft this season. Fantrax is the top dynasty fantasy football platform in the industry. Are you coming from another service? Not a problem. Fantrax can easily import any of your current leagues and rosters. Ever have a trade go wrong or make a mistake in dropping a player? Fantrax commissioner tools allow you to undo any move with one simple click. Fantrax is running a special promotion you don't want to miss. Sign up for free at fantrax.com/rotowire today to enter for your chance to win tickets to any regular season NFL game for you and your entire league. Plus, you get $6,000 in spending cash. That's right. Tickets for your entire league. Simply create a new league or bring over your existing leagues for more chances to win. Go to fantrax.com/rotowire and sign up today. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. We're also on the Blue Wire Network. It is a little bit different this time. They're doing a survey. You can win an extra $500. Just go to bluewirepods.com/survey and complete the Blue Wire audience survey about you and your podcast listening habits for a chance to win a $500 gift card. I'm here with Chris Harris from harrisfootball.com. Chris, thank you for joining me. As always, let's talk wide receivers. Couple guys on my list that caught my eye. Stefon Diggs. You and my buddy Chris Liss, I think, are higher on Stefon Diggs than anybody else. You both have him at 9 in PPR leagues.
Yeah, he's a flag player. Obviously, I understand that the hesitation. It's not so much like, oh my God, too many mouths to feed, because there are plenty of really good offenses where we draft everyone. And so, that isn't the part that's, I like Nico Collins at his price. I like Tank Dell at his price. But I like Stefon Diggs the most of that group, because he is the biggest difference between where I would buy him and where the market is selling him to you. The problem with Diggs, the worry that people have about Diggs, is clearly how it ended in Buffalo. If we were having this conversation in week 8 of last year, we'd be like, that's Stefon Diggs. He sure was a great pick in the first round. But what happened after that was an absolute disaster. And his team decided that it didn't want to deal with him anymore. Now, did the disaster happen, and did they decide they didn't want to deal with him for football reasons? We're never going to know that. And I admit it's possible that they are football reasons. The coaches aren't going to tell us. Yeah, we thought he was cooked. We decided to stop throwing the ball because we thought he was cooked. I went back and watched so much Stefon Diggs tape. from the descent into madness.
Okay.
And it wasn't an effort problem. People who say he was a dog, they're wrong. The bad kind of dog,
Right.
They're wrong. He was trying. There are a lot of plays on tape that are close, where just missed. Just Josh Allen, actually, it was Allen's fault, not Diggs's, and they just blew it. There was a pretty famous interception toward the end of the playoff loss to the Chiefs. That was Stefon Diggs trying real hard, and it was a bad throw. There's also a sense, though, when you watch the tape, that looks that Diggs would get previously when he had defensive attention. Philosophically, when Joe Brady came in, they decided we're going to take the easier looks now. We're going to throw it somewhere else if they decide they're going to take away Diggs. There are times on film where Stefon Diggs is waving, saying, hey, man, don't change the play. Don't do anything. Snap the ball. I've got single coverage. Do it. Snap it right now. Snap right now. And Josh Allen wouldn't. He would see the defense. He would call the audible. The ball would go somewhere else. So I am choosing this to interpret all of this as Diggs not being washed or diminished and going to a great situation. And honestly, like if the fall off hadn't happened at the end of last year, people would be drafting Stefon Diggs early. Nico Collins wouldn't be enough to scare you off of Stefon Diggs.
Yeah.
If you're scared of Diggs, it's because of what happened at the end in Buffalo, and you're not wrong. I can't prove that you're wrong. The potential to get Stefon Diggs in, cheap, just a perpetual, perennial first-round pick in the third round is too much for me to pass up, and I didn't see enough definitive, wow, he can't get open anymore at the end of last year.
You know what's interesting is the market has changed on Diggs. When he first, early, this is one where I did notice it quite a bit. Like I even kind of was anti him going at the 2-3 turn, like 24 overall. I picked him at 4.6 the other day. The hate is gone too far. Yeah. And to the point where I'm coming around on it. Like I'm Collins over Diggs, but Collins is going ahead of Diggs now. It's firmly cemented like that. So yeah, I'll take him. Like I'm getting Diggs around like Terry McLaurin prices, Amari Cooper prices.
Wow. I mean, that's really cheap. The Collins over Diggs thing, I don't think people are really thinking about football when they're making that choice.
What do you mean by that?
Because Nico Collins is really, really good one kind of guy. He's a big contested catch, what people want Drake London to be, kind of in the Mike Evans. Maybe Mike Evans isn't a perfect comp for Nico Collins, but like the tall contested catch red zone, like you might be Cortland Sutton, like you might be living on the edge a little bit where it might only be 70 catches and you're just hoping that 10 of them are for touchdowns. He's not an all field winner. He's not like going to break somebody down with great routes. He runs really good routes. They're good, but they're pretty, not the full route tree. He's not running a million complicated things.
See, I didn't know if you meant like if you're saying that from like people are basing it on his contract or if they're just basing it on something else.
I mean, if people are based on the contract, they can go screw themselves. Like, I mean, that's just terrible analysis. Like, they're committed to him because they spent money on him. You want 700 examples of cases where that wasn't the case? Every New England Patriot signed in the last 3 years by Bill Belichick, turning out not to be worth the money. Like, so that's a terrible reason. This notion of like Collins is the incumbent. Why would somebody come in and steal the most stuff? Collins is going to produce the most, and then everyone else gets the rest. That could be. I don't know. I can't see the future. But Diggs fills a void that they have between Tank Dell and Nico Collins. He fits in the offense. Collins is like the deep threat, contested catch, red zone jump ball, good route runner, but not a great mover. Tank Dell is super fun, but like I think we saw what happens when you use him too much. He's very, very small. He's a really great route runner, runs a great comeback route, but like not the full route tree and not a contested catch guy. And Diggs, at least theoretically, what Diggs used to be is everything and fills in getting open always, just always being open. So that's why I prefer Diggs slightly over Collins. And again, I could be wrong.
All right. Very good. Good stuff there. I thought that enlightening stuff. One guy you're lower in the herd on is Garrett Wilson. You're not going to get Garrett Wilson at wide receiver 20.
I'm not. And I love Garrett Wilson. What a route runner. He's fantastic. I'm being told right now that his quarterback is Aaron Rodgers. I'm just scared. I'm scared of a receiver who's never done it before, really through no fault of his own.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not taking that guy at 12 overall. He's not going to be the first pick on my team. Feels like psychotic behavior to me. I'm sorry. It feels like wish casting of the ultimate variety. I need to make sure I lock in. The Garrett Wilson upside, the thing that you think Garrett Wilson can do, I can draft players who've already done it multiple times. How am I taking the guy who's never done it, who has the quarterback who I guess there's a chance Aaron Rodgers is going to once again flip the bird to everyone like he did the last 2 MVP seasons in Green Bay and say, you think I'm cooked, huh? Here we go. It just feels like there's also a chance that he pulls the ripcord, and I don't know how into it he really is. And there comes a point where you don't want to really do it anymore. And I'm not saying that's the likeliest scenario. It's not, but for me, it's baked in risk with everybody that we go back to just a non-optimal quarterback situation. And, I don't know how anybody can fix their mouth to say, okay, I'm picking at the turn and I'm going to take I know I have the option for a bunch of receivers who've done it before, but Garrett Wilson, I'm going to take you and you've never done it.
Who's your favorite pick on the turn?
I mean, it's usually running backs. Okay. I get Barkley there. I get Jonathan Taylor there. So.
Yeah. And then
probably not going to be
receivers a little later. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I haven't had too many, it's odd this year. I have not had too many draft slots at the turn. Just haven't landed there that often. Well, probably not a bad place to be. But
no, I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Although it's funny. The one place I am on the turn, it's a 16 teamer and it's not third round reversal. So it's 16, 17, 48, 49. It's less than optimal.
It's hard to be a champion, Jeff. It's hard to be a champion.
It is. I wish it were a defending champ situation. It was a random.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Oh, okay. Just random. Oh, wow.
Random draw. Yeah, I wish. So yeah, but we'll live with it. We'll see what happens. All right. Tight ends. I didn't find much that you differ from the pack on there. I tried, Chris. I mean, there's like slight ordering differences, like McBride 5 instead of 3, Laporta 3 instead of 1. We could argue those, but I don't think those are hugely material. Maybe Mark Andrews 2 over him.
I will say, I can tell you, my advice is, my God, don't spend a third round pick on a tight end.
Yes.
I think you're hearing from a lot of people, man, you got to get one of the top 6 or 7 tight ends. You have to. And I think that's bunk. It depends on the price. The one I get the most is George Kittle. If I ever get someone that I consider to be in the top stratus, it's always Kittle. And it's like in the 6th or 7th round. And I'm perfectly happy to do that. And Andrews does sometimes fall a little bit, and maybe I'll do that in the 5th or something. But it just, people, again, it's the echo chamber of advice. You hear it from enough voices, not realizing that it's kind of all coming from the same place. And I just don't believe for 1 minute that we know for sure that there are 6 tight ends who are way better than the rest. And if you don't get one of them, wow, you're at a huge disadvantage. Because first of all, that's not true. And we learned it last year when everybody thought it was Dalton Kincaid and it turned out to be Sam Laporta. Like, there are going to be surprises, unexpected stuff. And then second of all, tight end just does not give you the kind of numerical advantage that you think it does. That just don't score like the top running backs and the top wide receivers do. I would be firing at scarce positions in round 3, and I would never consider a tight end.
Yeah. My drop off is around 9, whether it's Jake Ferguson, who I like, or you have Ingram at 9. I prefer not to go below that. There are leagues where I have, and I'm okay, but I'd like to get somewhere in those top 9. That's where I like there.
You and I don't know what's going to happen. The idea that there's some massive differentiating point, I guarantee you there's someone not being ranked in the top 10 among tight ends who's going to do 808, and people are going to go, oh my God, he's the tight end 3 next year. I guarantee it happens every year. That just doesn't take that much to be the tight end 3. I get TJ Hawkinson at the very, very end, and then I draft Taysom Hill. And I go, cool, I'll see you guys later. I got a lot of really great lottery tickets at running back and wide receiver.
Yeah, I get it there. Taysom Hill. He's there again. He's even on Yahoo. He's now a tight end. They're the last to cave and list him at tight end, which is funny because he actually has been playing tight end. It's actually accurate. He's lining up there.
No, he doesn't.
I thought I saw that this year that he was lining up there more.
Oh, maybe this year. Yeah, no. Like, to this point, like last year, the only position he didn't play was tight end. Maybe this year he'll be. The thing is, he's too small. He's not an actual tight end. You can't have a running
No, that's
play
true.
where he plays tight end. Like he's an H-back. He's
Yeah.
way too small. I'd be very surprised if primarily he's lining up as a tight end. He lines up in the backfield. He lines up as a slot receiver. Of course, he lines up at quarterback. We'll see. I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe in training camp they've changed their minds, but it has. I mean, if he's your only tight end on the field and he's lined up as the tight end, it almost seems to me like the defense would go, okay, cool, pass play.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Watch the end around. Watch the end around. Yeah. Very good there. All right, man. Hey, good stuff. I kept you a little longer than I promised, and I appreciate you being a good sport about that. But hey, folks, check out the Harris Football, harrisfootball.com. Check out the Almanac. He puts his, just blood, sweat, tears into that. It is a lot of writing, and he does great with that. And it's a second novel he does every summer. So there you go. Yeah. Chris, awesome talking with you. We can see you on the golf course soon enough. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And say hi. I want to say hi to everybody at RotoWire. Thank you very much.
You bet. Chris Harris, everybody. Make sure to check out his work. Thanks to our sponsors, Fantasy Sports Knockout, Verse Fantasy, and Fantrax. If you like this podcast, please rate, and review, subscribe to it there. Comment on us, send in the comments. We'll respond. And of course, check out RotoWire, rotowire.com/pod. Get a free peek behind our paywall, 2 days free behind the paywall. No credit card is required. Just for valid email address, and off you go. rotowire.com/pod. Thanks, everybody. Take care.